do, good people? Episode one, the culture of. We are back. Both of us. We are here,
Yes.
ready for you.
All
Quick
right.
intros. Quick intros.
Oh, quick intros, right.
Oh, 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 let's start again.
Yeah,
Like,
okay.
let's. I mean, I'm not too worried about like editing like mistakes out. Let's. We're just trying to keep it loose though. Thank you. All right.
All right.
All right. What to do, good people? Here we are, episode one, the culture of. We back. Yes, this is real.
Yes.
Quick intro time. Hit it.
I'm Amber Chenevert, brand strategist extraordinaire. Happy to be here.
And I am Gary J. Nix, your favorite strategist.
Mm.
And we are here, episode one. Quick reminder, please like, share, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, rate us 5 stars. It's free. It ain't hard. Why would you give us less than 5 stars? Did we tell tell somebody something about you? We ain't mean it if we did. I don't even think we did it. Just give us 5 stars, all right?
I know, because I used to at least get that from my teaching evaluation. So I at least want something good. Come
Exactly.
on.
Super easy, super easy. But as we're on episode one, let's go ahead and get into today's topic. Let's start with rising above the noise.
So with Rising Above the Noise, definitely our set off segment. What we really want to talk about today as a theme is the culture of startups. So we really want to think about culture from the perspective of like all of that energy around like getting that business going, really thinking about the future, really embracing all of your talents and skills and bringing that to the world. But is that really accessible? And what's really the culture around that that helps us to understand that and think about that? So we want to do that. Um, but more specifically, we want to think about like our tension point as always, because as strategists, we definitely want to make sure that we're kind of pushing and pulling in our topic areas. So um, there's a tension between the mythology of startups in American society and the mythology really being tied to those American ideals of opportunity, pulling yourselves up by your bootstraps, ingenuity, innovation, um, like those kinds of things that we think are quintessential Americana when it comes to work and entrepreneurship. So there's a tension there between that mythology, that thing that we chase, and the reality of that startup environment, which is really limited amounts of funding, um, lack of access to affordable business services, small-minded gatekeepers, um, and just having a harder time being able to materialize those ideas. So there's this real tension between that mythology of the American startup and then the material reality of access to really being able to start up.
Yeah, and there's also just other things to kind of decode is like, okay, when do you actually look for someone to give you money? What does that even mean when someone is investing in your business? What kind of control are you potentially giving away because someone else is footing part of or all of the bill? There's just so many things I think we can really talk about. Um, Also, and we'll clearly get to this because this is how we are.
Uh-huh.
Just how society looks at your startup,
Yes.
things like entitlement, or things like privilege, or things like misunderstanding how much work it takes, and all that fun stuff. Even before you get to
Mhm.
even thinking about making money, So let's kind of start thinking more or talking more about that stuff. Let's kind of work on breaking it down for our audience.
Yeah, so when you talk about um let's roll back and let's talk about, how your business is perceived. Unpack that a little bit for people. Like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, it's really about sometimes I think people just see success. You have a business, they're like, "Oh, you are successful.
Mhm.
You successfully opened a business." Yes.
Mhm.
Does that mean you're automatically successful? If you've ever tried having your own business, you know that that is not true. um, it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of time. Sometimes you're successful, sometimes you're not. But there does tend to be this idea that just because you have a business that you are successful. And a couple of things can come out of that. Sometimes people can say, well, you must be good because you have a business. So I'm not pressed to go ahead and buy from you.
Mhm.
Or you have people who, for whatever reason, may not like what it is you're offering, which is sometimes just more connected to who you are
Mhm.
than anything else.
Right.
Um, you have the people who get really excited about what it is that you have to offer, at least in the very beginning.
Mhm.
How do you sustain that?
Mhm.
There's a lot about perception of what your offer is, what your company is, of course, what your brand is. And these are things that we all have to really deal with and often wrestle with. I mean, think about it, just for this podcast alone,
Yeah.
we're just starting this, and we know that we're gonna have to wrestle with a lot of differing ideas and a lot of differing pieces of feedback and a lot of different feelings and a lot of different thoughts and a lot of things, um, which can feel overwhelming if you think about it too much, but you still have to figure out how to forge ahead.
So speaking of that, and again, just like thinking about culture, right? So you talked about how people, you know, might not even perceive that you um or are going to even have a worthy idea or a valuable idea just by the way that you show up, how you look, your accent, your education background. All of these things feed into like this culture of startup. Like, how do you come to the table? How do you show up? Are you speaking in a way that is in their minds someone that they can um invest in, right?
Right,
Um are you the typical person that they think of, being male or particularly being a white male, that they think of as being sort of that quintessential startup person? Um, do you come from a pedigree or background that signals to them that you're worth investing in? And I'm not saying these things are right or wrong, but this becomes a part of that culture of startup where you really have to sort of unpack like there's not just that it's not just the reality of having a great idea or even necessarily having the background and the experience to be able to pull it off, but do you even sit in that culture in a way that means that you'll be perceived as an expert? Are you fighting an additional uphill battle as a result of that?
right, and I think Um, something about that, the kind of fighting the uphill battle,
Mhm.
I think that also can point to the culture around startups, right? Or the
Okay.
culture around your audience, right?
Okay.
Because once again, when you're thinking about from a brand perspective or from any type of business perspective,
Mhm.
you're always going to have people who don't like what you do.
Sure.
And as human beings, I think sometimes we focus on those people too many times. I've heard a lot of successful people, legitimately successful people, talk about how they can get 97 positive mentions, but the 3 negative, uh, interactions they have are the ones they focus on,
Mhm.
and they try to figure out how to deal with that. They're getting 90% no, 97% good,
Mhm.
and they're focused on 3% bad, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I know there's like a theoretical construct from psychology around that. Cuz cuz as humans like or particularly in American culture, we do tend to do that. We'll fixate on the negative even though there's all kinds of positive and praise around us.
r
Yes.
right, and one of the things that we have to culturally think about when we're talking about what we do in our business
Mhm.
is that remember to focus on who it is that you're trying to speak to.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, you want to sell to everybody. Mathematically, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Psychologically, we know you can't do that.
Right.
Intellectually, we know we can't do that.
Right.
Emotionally, not always. But we have to remember these real truths, these real axioms of just humanity. And we have to figure out how to sustain our focus on the right things.
Right, and I think that goes back to the tension as well
Hmm.
with this sort of mythology of startup Americana versus the material reality. The mythology sends people to a place where they have to define their audience by the hundreds of millions, because that signals maximizing profit, right?
Hmm.
Where to your point, the material reality is that your audience really might be 200,000 starting out.
Hmm.
And then you might be able to have a really nice business if we focus on them, if we believe the 80/20 rule is real, you know? If we believe that, then, there's an opportunity to build. I think that, sort of dealing in this like startup Americana, it's like you have to, like, hit the ball out of the park out the gate because our culture celebrates that. Our
Right.
culture celebrates the quote unquote "start from nothing" startups, and that everyone becomes a billionaire, and you're like, now you wanna reach billionaire status, but it's like, is that really the priority, or is that part of that, startup Americana mythology that is it not that isn't necessarily what your business is about or what you need, you know? Um
Yeah. And I think mythology is the perfect word here because it is a myth. Like,
Mhm.
oh, I just started up and now I have a multi-million-dollar business. That's not how any of these businesses work. Even
Right.
if you have this huge boom at the beginning, you generally don't sustain it.
Mhm.
I've seen it even in the huge multi-million dollar, billion-dollar companies
Yeah.
where they're a client and they forget about the things that got them there. Like like when we were, in the South at a certain large carbonated beverage company,
Uh-huh.
I took a picture of something on the wall. And you're
Mhm.
like, say it's like, what's that about? I was like, just in case they forget who they are.
Yeah.
Because I had an experience working at another large company that's in financial services, and they, you know, allow you to use a piece of plastic card to make purchases.
Yeah.
Um, and I was talking about something strategic, and I had some frameworks, and like, where'd you even get this framework from? I'm like, it's by the stairs.
Right. Yeah.
Like, oh, so you forgot.
Yeah.
So you have the mythology of success, or that it's easy. That's the
Mhm.
real mythology. You
Mhm.
have the people who are focused on the wrong thing to sustain the company. Um, the material success, which
Mhm.
yes, you need that
You
for a
need
business.
that.
Um, but the foci are all over the place,
Mm.
and it's taken away from the things that need to be done in order to get the things that you want and need.
Right.
And startups, I feel like, especially nowadays in fail fast, grow fast, they really can suffer and often do suffer, not necessarily to the point where they get closed down, but do suffer from that. And now they have taken some steps backwards. So now they have to catch up,
Mhm.
focused on only growth.
Mhm.
It's like, yeah, you're going to be in a growth cycle for a while, especially in the beginning, because you start small.
Mhm.
Every company starts small,
Mhm.
but at some point, growth slows
Yeah.
because there's always going to be a finite number of people for real.
Mhm.
And then you have to start thinking about when you're losing customers for whatever reason, You have to regain them. So now sustain.
Mhm.
Now it's the revolving door. Is the revolving door happening for a good reason?
Mhm.
Are people leaving because you're not paying attention to them?
Mhm.
What are all those reasons? And I
Right.
don't think startups always think about that because they feel that's too far ahead.
Yeah. But I mean, but there's something to I mean, I think, for all my computer science folk out here, um, you know, there's there's this opportunity um to really dig into user experience, right? From that perspective or your customer experience. And it's reasonable to your point to have that as part of your strategy when you're starting up. To not just because that's another tension we talked about before. The tension between building a brand versus building a product or building a service. And where, from a startup perspective, do you focus? And we talked before about how a lot of times the focus is going to depend on how people were trained.
Mhm,
If you were trained from a computer science perspective, then your focus is going to be on user experience, UX. If you're trained from a marketing perspective, advertising perspective, you're going to be thinking about what is the brand? What is the story? How do I pull people in? And then you'll get into the details of product and service. And neither one of those are wrong. Um, but like eh, canceling out one for the other means that you're going to miss some of what we talked about before, which is the customer service. Means that if you're so focused on product, you're going to miss the storytelling of the brand, which is important because at this point, no matter what you're doing, you're going into a competitive environment. And so you have to be able to have that differentiating story. Um, but again, if we go back to the theme, the culture of startups, that if the idea is you got to get out, fail fast, move forward, whatever the saying is, you could miss an opportunity to think through what you really need to be doing.
mhm.
And sometimes that means, that you might have to work this other job a little bit longer, or like whatever it is to just give yourself some time really to develop because the material reality of the startup means that there's no safety net
Mhm,
for folks.
mhm.
There's there's either you're sore or either you soar or you like fall down and hit your head, you know.
Right.
And you might be doing a combination of both for a while. Um But, you know, there's an opportunity to not really feel like you have to do one or the other. You don't have to. You can live in a little bit of the Americana kind of ideal, but then also situate yourself in the material reality and pace yourself as a result.
Yeah, I think sometimes we have to remember it's all about balance,
Mhm.
right? Um, there's something I try to tell my students all the time, uh, "And is greater than or."
Mhm.
Um, Binary choices often get in the way of success or progress, whatever progress means for you and your company or you and your life in general.
Yeah.
Um, Most things are more than one thing. So, as someone who was at one point forced to go out on my own, yeah, it was sink or swim.
Mhm.
That was the circumstance already.
Mhm.
Um, and realistically, it's a circumstance for a lot of people right now.
Especially now, yeah. That's true.
You know, but if you pull back a little bit, even when you have your regular 9 to 5, it's still sink or swim.
Mhm.
And that's not to try to diminish the feelings around it. There are plenty of days when I'm just like, you know what I miss? That regular check,
Mhm. Mhm.
knowing when that check's gonna hit.
Mhm.
Uh, but there are pros and cons to everything.
Mhm.
And while I don't want to promote the idea that just living to survive is the way to do things,
Yeah.
sometimes you do have to do what you need to do to survive.
Agree. And then I would also say that goes back to that material reality piece too.
Yeah.
And then from a culture perspective, what you have experienced, like growing up, um, what you've been exposed to is such a driving force. Are you somebody who grew up in a family of entrepreneurs and you have a lot of family support around entrepreneurship? Or did you grow up potentially in an environment where people had city jobs or they had, pensions or they were police officers or firefighters and they don't understand what you're doing? You better go get that city job. You better go ahead and go drive that bus. What are we talking about
Mhm.
starting up? There's a business over there that you could go work out. Why you gotta start a thing, right?
Mhm.
And so, like, people can also be fighting against like their own sort of circumstances of like how, they've been raised, what they've been exposed to, versus somebody else, again, who's, you know, come up in an entrepreneurial environment, had entrepreneurial like parents or uncles or other mentors that could help be a support and a driving force. But I feel like our culture by and large, we love the mythology, but we don't necessarily like to resource it. you know, we don't want to put, we don't want to put those resources in to help people outside of that bubble to be able to really elevate. Um, because that, because again, because of that tension
Yeah.
between the mythology and the material reality and what it actually means for people.
Yeah. And once again, I just want to be clear that we're not trying to discourage anyone from doing anything. Um, we're talking about real things. I come from a family of teachers, which once again, why did I run? I was pushed into it. I didn't even know it.
Uh-huh.
But there was the go get this teaching job,
Mhm. Mhm.
work this many years,
Mhm.
get your pension, all that fun stuff.
Mhm.
I'm old enough to definitely have been pushed in that direction. I didn't go in that direction.
Mhm.
And while there are plenty of difficult days, I know for me, I need to be connected to what it is that I want to do, or else I just stop.
Yeah.
Whether it's from boredom, whether it's from apathy,
Mhm.
I need to be interested in what it is I'm doing. And I think that a lot of people who try startup life, they share that same thing. There's
Mhm.
a culture around that as well.
Mhm.
A culture of wanting to build something. A culture of seeing something that needs to be built. Because
Mhm.
you talked about how you startup companies generally they go into a competitive environment.
Mhm.
I think that even for the ones who just think they're coming up with the greatest invention since the wheel or since
Right.
fire,
Sure.
I don't know if they realize that th- while they're not entering a competitive environment, they're literally creating a competitive environment.
Right. And I'll say, and I'll kind of go back to what I said before, which is like all of that depends on like how they came to be in that moment. Like depending on how folks' experiences and how they were trained, they'll know that. So if it's somebody with a marketing or advertising or sales or retail background that's starting a business, like they're going to know their biggest competitor is really centered on that budget that already exists, right? Like where is the money already divvied up and what is going to be sacrificed in order for you to engage me, right?
Mhm.
But if you're coming from a background that may have like completely focused on, like design or industrial engineering, UX, etc. Like, you might be thinking about your priority might be thinking about fulfilling a need in a marketplace,
Mhm.
you know, but in your mind, because of these certain benefits, like, there's nothing else that compares, right? But the marketer is gonna be thinking about, "I gotta compete in that. I gotta compete in the basket. I gotta compete in the dollar. I gotta compete the budget." So it's yeah, you got direct competitors, but those indirect ones could be even more fierce, right? So again, like finding that balance between, as you stated before, the mythology and the material reality.
Mhm. Yeah, that balance and the need to sometimes hear or listen to people who are not in your specific sphere of expertise
Mhm.
is so important.
Mhm.
Um, you need all parts. I often talk about even if you're selling a product, you're in the service industry. The product is for the service of whoever your consumers are.
Mhm.
And I have found that when I've gotten clients to think about it from that perspective, it not only informs different behavior, it actively changes behavior.
Mhm.
Now, it doesn't happen all the time.
Mhm.
Like if that was the magic wand, I might not be doing the podcast because I'd be on an island that I just found somewhere or something.
Okay.
But there is something to be said about creating a product or a service that is the best for whoever your consumer is.
Mhm.
And I never want to take that away from anyone.
Mhm.
I just want to also make sure, so not instead of, in conjunction with,
Mhm.
make sure that people, startup companies understand that whatever you have is more than your product. It's more than your service. It's more than that moment that you're trying to help someone with.
Right.
It's literally something else. And how do you get to that something else?
So let me ask you something. Um, since we're talking about the culture of startups and we started out talking about again that tension between the American mythology of startups and the material reality. Um, when we think about culture, and it's yes, it's those things that are happening around us in the business environment, but it's also about the culture that you want to create in your company or in your business, right?
Mhm.
Um, talk to me about what you think is the relationship between the culture that you create internally and then how you move in the marketplace.
So that's actually one of my favorite questions because I feel like that's the question I get when I have my shirt on. When I have my brands don't create culture, people do,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
I think that the best companies do a great job of their internal culture reflecting the culture of the people who they're trying to serve.
Mhm.
So your internal culture should be informed by what it is that you're trying to do for people.
Mhm.
Once again, you need to understand those people. Why do you have something? Why is this thing that you have built going to be good for people? I feel like um, a lot of startups, a lot of times the tech ones also, they feel like it's something that was great for them, so it's great for everybody else.
Mhm.
It's great for them, so whatever happens is going to also be great for them.
Right.
And there can be some overlap with that, but it's not always exactly that.
Mhm.
And that's one of the points where people can get very upset, whether it's the people inside the startup or the people who are dealing with the startup from the outside.
Mhm.
Because now you have these different cultural dynamics that come from your need to sustain your business, because every cultural dynamic is going to affect your business in one way or the other,
Yeah.
whether you want it to or not. And that's where their internal culture will help inform the decisions you make on which direction to go.
Mhm.
So you have to be able to stand on something, even though we've seen a lot of companies not truly stand on what it is that they believe, and they're able to sustain because they've built up coffers in a long time. But they they signal what they stand for by their actions, but they don't always stand on their actions, whatever they may be.
Well, I think this we this actually gets back to episode 0 a little bit.
Mhm.
When we started talking about culture, because culture is so much more than just whatever the trend is at the time. Um, the trends are signals of, deeper foundations that are also important to know about, and to understand whether your brand or your business can attach themselves to that, or is that really appropriate? It's worth like really thinking that through. I think for brands that we've seen where we feel like they've wavered in their values and done so in a way that is potentially surprising to us, you have to wonder where they really believed what they were saying in the first place.
You might have hit the bullseye on that one.
And when you have heartbreak in the marketplace, um, it's because you had your audience believe in the thing that you were selling,
Mhm.
because that was a close and important value for them, and then you broke their hearts, and then you wonder why they don't wanna come back.
Right.
I mean, and that's a relationship thing.
Mhm.
So there's cultural foundations, metrics that you can align internally and then align in the marketplace as well, because you can ensure that you have that right audience that, you know, um, that all of that makes sense for. And you don't necessarily build your business just for the sake of the audience and the audience's values. Going back to what we said before, it's all about balance. Like, you have to make sure that you're going in the market, that you've built a culture in your organization that you can sustain,
Yep.
right? From a value standpoint, so that no matter how the wind blows, that you're going to be steadfast and your audience can trust that. Um, but if you're just kind of going off of whatever the high level trend is and you just want to hop on that, it's kind of like, if you're in relationship with someone, whether it's friendship or romantic, and every time you see this person, it's like they're a whole new person.
Right.
I'm not talking about changing outfits. I'm like, your personality's different, you talk different, your accent's different, like your values are different. I don't recognize you.
Mhm.
We don't like that in human relationship.
Right.
Why would we put up with that with
E
brands?
exactly. Yeah, you can't just jump on the next vibe and just go ahead and it's like, "Okay, new thing. I'm on this now." All of a sudden, it's like, "Wait, how did you even get here?" You know?
Right. That's exactly right. Like, if you're gonna be goth, be goth. But like, you goth today, tomorrow you gonna be preppy, and then I don't even recognize you, and then you don't even know my name anymore.
Right.
Like, what? I thought we were cool. you know? So I think brands like really can, like, you know, can get can get away from the customer. Can we talk about the importance of primary research right now?
Yeah,
Just
of
real
course.
quick. Okay,
It's our
so
podcast. We can do whatever we wanna
I
do.
mean we can. I just don't want to be out of order. so Um, but I think, when that's the other piece about, with startups, and we're talking about the culture of startups, and thinking about what your brand or what your business is going to be and who you're going to be in the world. Yes, there's the product or the service or whatever it is that you want to deliver. Um, but I want to stress in our moment of AI how important it is to talk to real humans that you want to sell to. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to get into this more deeply in another podcast.
I think you just opened
Uh,
up deconstructed right there, opened the door for that, but yeah.
but like bots are not real people. Okay. Like you need to talk to real people. So primary research I think is probably even more important now than it was in like the 70s and 80s because there's so many ways that um that businesses, that brands can create um these audiences that their initial sort of foundation of their the data was real people. But then it's gone through so many different iterations and you have potentially lost your human in that. So while I think these technologies, I think AI and all of that, I think it's fantastic. I use it in my work. Um, but it's always important to do that check
Yeah.
with real human people at at some point in your process before you get too far along because at the end of the day, it's the humans who's buying, whether it's a B2B situation or it's, a consumer product, whatever it is, we're still in a place where the human is buying.
Yeah. I think that's the perfect way to wrap up this episode. Um, because that's just opened the door for a much deeper conversation that I think we're going to have in a few minutes. Um, but like I said, that's great. Um, so being that this is our first real episode, this would be the point where we would open the door for your comments in response to. So remember, this is your chance to, after listening to the episode, you can give us your feedback. You can tell us what you want us to talk about. You can say hi to us. You can do all types of things. You can tell us what you like. You can respectfully, very key word, respectfully, tell us what you think might be missing because we do listen. We really do. So with that being said, uh, brief reminder: like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, give us a thumbs up. Tell your friends to give us a thumbs up. Give us 5 stars in the rating. Tell your friends to do the same. Until the next time, this was the culture of episode 1. Catch y'all later.
Thank you.